Hi.
Hi, everyone.
Hello.
Hello.
Hi.
Oh, hi.
Hello.
Monica.
Thanks. Hi, Erica.
Hi. I'm already having technical difficulties.
Oh, that's okay.
Really?
Huh.
It said my connection is unstable, and then my computer shut down, and now I can't find my agenda. So anyway.
Kind of like this.
No. Weirder. It just like the screen went haywire. So, okay, now you're making me queasy. Okay, so well, how do I'm sorry, I am new to all this. So how do I know who's here? There are just 9 of us, is that right?
There's okay, I keep
There
admitting.
should be on the top of your screen, there should be a symbol that's like a square, and then let's see, that's speaker view. Do you have it on full screen?
Do I have it on full screen? I have, well, you don't all need to know this. Why does it say Erica Wagner? That's funny.
What did I wait? Hold on a second. It's probably
Hello, folks.
Hello, Marlene. Okay, so I have 9 boxes, 11 people.
Yep.
Yeah, okay. So should we get started or should we wait for more people? It seemed like there was a lot of interest, but maybe people couldn't make it.
Your call, Madam Chair.
Yes.
Well,
I would say get started.
okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, is Jean here?
I am.
Oh, there you are, Jean. Okay. Sorry, it doesn't have the names. And Steve. Sorry.
See Steve yet, but I'm sure he'll be along.
Okay. All right. Well, first of all, thank you all for for attending the first meeting of the Soapstone Melvin Hazen Broad Branch Parks and Trails Committee. And one thing on our agenda is to change the name. So, which I just added. And I want to thank you. I think I've talked to several of you already about the committee. And so thank you for all your help. We have 2 speakers tonight, Jean Braha from Rock Creek Conservancy and Steve Sari, who I think you all know. And I know Jean is on a tight time schedule, so I think we should probably just get going with her in a minute, but I did want to just say my goal for tonight's meeting is, first of all, to see some people and put some faces with some names, and also just to figure out issues that we could be involved in and how we could leverage the ANC's power to advance our goals and vice versa. And to that end, we have David, who has volunteered to be the liaison with the ANC. So I'd like to stay focused on that. I'm sure there are lots of issues in our neighborhood, but some might not lend themselves to being dealt with at the ANC level in terms of parks and trails. Anyway, since we have limited time with Jean, I was going to give her 15 minutes to lay out some issues, and then we could have time for questions, and then we'll hear from Steve, assuming he can get on, and then hopefully we'll have some discussion about other issues that were on the agenda and what people want to be doing on those issues and offering updates, and then hopefully we can wrap up with some potential issues and maybe do a survey after the meeting of what people want to focus on. So does that sound okay to folks?
Yep.
Okay. So Jean, you have 24 minutes left before you need to go.
Before I turn into a pumpkin.
Yes.
Thank you, Erica, for this opportunity, and thank you all. I think I mentioned to Erica when she and I spoke last week that I'm pretty sure you're the only Parks and Trails Focus Committee of any of the ANCs throughout the district. And you're not the only neighborhood that has such a tight connection to Rock Creek Park in particular, but parks in general. So I really have always appreciated your neighborhood's real commitment to the natural spaces that make your neighborhood so wonderful and add so much quality of life, and look forward to continuing to work with the committee and the ANC more broadly to ensure that Rock Creek is protected and restored as much as possible. I think all of you are familiar with Rock Creek Conservancy. I'm happy to talk about it at great length, but I promised Erica I wouldn't. But in a nutshell, we are a friends group to Rock Creek Park. We're a philanthropic and stewardship partner of the park, but we also are a watershed organization. So we were founded in 2005 to protect the entire almost 80 square miles of Rock Creek watershed. So we work both in the district and Montgomery County to ensure that the water in Rock Creek is as healthy as possible. And I don't see him here this evening, but I know many of you know Bill Sittig, who's one of our bacteria monitors. He's been helping us all along. Understand this is the second year that we've been in partnership with a number of other organizations and with funding from DOEE. So thanks, Steve, when he gets here, please, at 8, because it's in his shop, that the funding for that particular project comes, that we've been really getting a better understanding of just some of the challenges that Rock Creek faces. And Erica, you invited me to talk about issues with Rock Creek, and I will. We have lots of them. But I also want to highlight a few areas of opportunity to celebrate and some things that are really great and fun. And the first is I want to thank all of you because ANC 3F made a very generous grant to the Conservancy earlier this year. One of the big ways that we help to restore Rock Creek is by restoring these demonstration areas that we refer to as mini oases. And if you have not yet had the pleasure of going over to Melvin Hazen West, so that area between Reno and Sedgwick and Tilden and the creek itself, Melvin Hazen Run, if you haven't had a chance to do that, I'd love to come out and see it with you, but Marlene can take you for a tour because I know she knows all about it. She's been watchdogging us in our work there. Our goal with that mini oasis is really a microcosm of the goal of the park's restoration goals, which is to take what's currently at least 40% forest covered by invasive plants and reduce it to less than 5%. You can see in the forest, this is a little bit of Rock Creek. It's not in your ANC, I'm sorry. This is along the Valley View Trail, almost to Boundary Bridge, but it's a gorgeous part of the park and you can hike there from your homes. You can see that this forest is really missing an understory. So you have these beautiful canopy trees, but then there's not a lot other than leaf litter down on the ground. And because there's so many invasive plants growing up and over the trees, we're really missing that shrub layer and the herb layer that should be there and providing wildlife habitat. You know, Melvin Hazen and most of the parks that are right near you are places where the DC state bird, the wood thrush, would like to have its ground nests. Yeah, there's very good birding in your area. So we work with volunteers, some long-term volunteers called weed warriors, as well as, I guess, weekend warriors, you know, folks that want to come out once or, you know, a couple of times and work with us to remove invasive plants. We have slowed that down during the pandemic, but we are almost done this week removing the bamboo patch from behind the community garden. But back to you guys. The ANC provided funds in this fall. We'll have several days where we'll be planting native plants, some of those shrubs that I was just talking about, spice bush, mountain laurel, pink azalea, all the sort of fun, colorful things along the slope where volunteers have removed those. So one of the ways that has nothing to do with policy that the ANC, that your committee could be really helpful is by highlighting those volunteer opportunities to all of your neighbors. Besides obviously having direct restoration benefit and helping us really restore those forests and ultimately the creek. We find that bringing people out into the park and giving them an opportunity, there's a lot of education that happens when they come out and volunteer. And it also really gives people an appreciation for some of the nuance that we're dealing with when we're trying to figure out the right solution to some of the challenges that we have. And then we also find that we call it people-powered restoration, right? That coming out and really rolling up their sleeves and doing some work in the park also gives us an opportunity to help people think about the connection between the issues that we're seeing in the park and all of your homes. So the two biggest issues that Rock Creek is facing, and this is the creek itself as well as the park, are the invasive plants, which I just mentioned, as well as stormwater. And it's not like the park is generating stormwater. Nobody in the National Park Service has decided to introduce invasive plants. Those are all coming from outside of park boundaries. So it's really helpful when we have volunteers come out who then can draw an understanding to what they might do differently in their own yards, or talk to their building management if they live in a high rise, or encourage their ANC to take action to address some of these issues. So for example, just this morning, one of my board members who happens to live right near Melvin Hazen texted me and said, I just saw a gardener dumping weeds from someone's yard into Melvin Hazen. And she apparently went up and told the gardener that that's not allowed, which is true, even though it is decomposable in theory. Dumping yard waste is the same as dumping litter, and you could be fined for that, as well as it's a major vector for introducing invasive plants into the park. So simple things like talking to your own gardener, whether that's your, in my case, 12-year-old, or the company that you hire, is certainly something that you can do to help the parks, as well as ensuring that the rest of your neighbors and community members have an awareness of this and can take those simple actions to protect Rock Creek in that way. In addition, and I'm sure Steve will talk about this when he gets here, but the storm water that creates such a challenge for Rock Creek and is an issue that the Conservancy is always working to address. In many cases, we find that the district's regulations are some of the best and the tightest in the country. There are a lot of really great protections that are built into the laws for new development or redevelopment that reduce the amount of stormwater that's flowing off of all the impervious surface around the park. When that stormwater comes into the park, we see it scours the ground, it carries soil with it. Or in some cases, I think of it like chutes and ladders, all of that rainwater, when it hits the ground, it's going not over directly into the park, but it's going into a storm drain and then taking kind of the fast lane into Rock Creek. And this creates, in the case of the Soapstone area, you see almost flash floods on occasion after a heavy rain. Kathy Wiss, I think I'm not sure if she lives right in your ANC, if she's a little further west. She's one of the staff at the Audubon Naturalist Society that we partnered with on the bacteria monitoring. And we almost lost her one day in Soapstone Valley trying to collect a bacteria sample. But that stormwater, it brings really heavy pollutant loads into Rock Creek, and that can be bacteria from areas like yours that have a separate stormwater system, not the combined sewer. The big bacteria load is coming from pet waste that people are not scooping up. So that's a win-win for most community members because it's no fun if it step in someone else's dog waste.
Yes, are you having trouble?
But it also carries a lot of nutrients with it. So nitrates and phosphates, and those often come off of yards that have been over-fertilized. In the winter time as well, we see over-application of de-icing solvent. We want everyone to be safe and not slip. But there is the right amount, and that's whatever the label says. So these are simple things that, if you come out to one of our cleanups, we will teach you about. Our stream team leaders who are volunteers, and I'm sure we have some in your area, as well as just simple things that you can learn from our website that, of course, we would love for you to encourage. And I'd love to think about ways that the ANC can use its powers and levers, if you will, to really encourage some of these changes in the way the landscape around the park can really help protect it from the outside in. Similarly, in terms of voluntary behaviors, we've been working with the Park Service this summer to promote the notion of responsible recreation. So I think everybody is using the park much more frequently than usual. And that adds to the wear and tear that the Park Service sees. So we are encouraging, using the hashtag Recreate Responsibly if you're on social media. Marlene, I appreciate that you indulged me a post about the Recreate Responsibly and Forest Hills Connection recently, really suggesting that people stay on designated trails. And we have great volunteers through the Potomac Appalachian Trail Club that take care of the trails in your area. Soapstone, Melvin Hazen, Western Ridge Trail. That you stay out of the creek to protect yourself, that you park only in designated parking spots. If you happen to be fortunate enough to live near the park, we encourage you just to walk in, that you don't litter. And of course, the pandemic specific recreate responsibly principles of wearing your mask if you can't stay more than 6 feet away from others, you know, and really trying to find those lesser used parts of the park so that you can spread out a little bit more. I just lost my final thought. So I'm going to just talk about recreate responsibly for another moment or two, and it's going to come back to me. This is hour 12 of meetings for the day. So I appreciate your patience with me as I try to remember what the heck it is I'm trying to talk about. Oh, I know what it is. Something that the Conservancy will be potentially looking for a letter of support from the ANC from in the future, but I also welcome your input on is we've heard from a number of members of the community that there's interest in examining the name of Melvin Hazen of the park and the creek itself. Melvin Hazen was a leader of zoning in the district about 100 years ago, maybe a little bit less than that, and was the primary architect of the displacement of Black people from the Tenleytown area, from Fort Reno, to areas east of the park, and you know, otherwise was quite racist in his application of zoning laws. So there's been a interest in potentially examining that name, as well as among, you know, we've heard from members of the community in other parts of the city where, you know, their part of the park has a name that is contentious. You may have read about some of the issues around Newlands and Chevy Chase Circle. So we'll be working with community members all around the park to understand all the needs, to coordinate with the Park Service in terms of the research that needs to be done in terms of what you need to do in order to change a name. And then if there does come a time, it likely will require congressional action. And that's a case where it is always really helpful. There's Kathy, she did not fall down the soapstone.
Right.
That's
You
great.
know what? I'm sorry to interrupt you, but apparently there were all these people waiting, but
Oh no.
several of you didn't have to wait, right? So I don't understand that. And I clicked the, like, you know, don't wait to be admitted button. So I now see several people have joined us, and I apologize for that. And I also neglected to mention that this is being recorded, but given my techno issues, maybe it really isn't being recorded. So I don't know, but we have plenty more people, and I apologize that they were waiting to be admitted. So, and I apologize for interrupting you, Jean. So.
Not at all. I was just wrapping up to say that, you know, as that issue progresses, we obviously would love to have conversations with you all about it. And also, you know, when there's an action to be taken, would love, if appropriate, to have the support of the ANC on that matter. So I think I'm supposed to take questions now, or comments or suggestions.
I don't know if
Eric,
anybody,
this
yeah.
is David Bardeen.
Mhm.
Can I talk?
Yes, and I think we should limit it to one question per person, since now there are so many people and Jean only has 12 minutes.
Well, I've
Yes,
missed.
go ahead.
I've missed everything. I haven't heard a word Jean said.
Oh,
I'd
I'm
like-
so sorry about that.
That's all right. But I'd just like to address something fundamental, and that's conflict of interest. Jean has responsibilities. Her organization has responsibilities. They're very important. Many of us support what she and her organization does, but it's not necessarily the same thing that people who own a co-op position or a condo position overlooking this park have as their interest. So could Jean, just, if she hasn't done it already, just talk a little about the interests of the Conservancy and where they might conflict with the interests of the homeowners and residents around Soapstone Valley.
Sure. And just for everybody who's just recently joined, I think I know many of you, but I'm Jeannie Braha, the Executive Director of Rock Creek Conservancy, and I was invited as a guest to share some ways that the Conservancy is working to, you know, on many of the issues that are before your committee frequently. Just to be clear, I am not a member of the committee. I would not expect to have a vote or a voice in the same sense that a resident of the ANC would. Rather, I see the Conservancy as a technical advisor, as a group that might bring issues to your attention, and otherwise help both educate you as well as occasionally request support that you may or may not choose to give on different matters. David, if you're asking specifically about places where what the Conservancy wants might be different than what a homeowner would want, I do see a lot of alignment. I think the reduction in stormwater and invasives that I just mentioned benefit the community greatly. You know, we didn't talk about this at length, but Rock Creek is, you know, literally cools the air around you, keeps your heating and air conditioning bills down. It cleans the air. It provides, you know, real quality of life benefits, including property value increases. So I'd hope that there's a fair amount of alignment. I'm sure there are issues where, you know, what the Conservancy wants is for the best interest of the park as a whole, which may then be in opposition to a specific community or specific homeowners. I can't think of one of those off the top of my head, but I'm sure it will.
I was thinking in our experience last year on the sewers pipes going through Soapstone Valley and the position the Conservancy took on that, aligning itself with DC Water. And I'm sorry, you have a very much broader agenda. And I was really only thinking about the sewer program that DC Water will intends to start in Soapstone Valley.
Does anyone have any other questions?
Yes, please. I'm Judy Belo, and I live in the Van Ness East Building, which has a view of Soapstone Park. You can see it just right out my window here. We formed a committee here because we are interested in the sewer project, which will of course impact us a great deal. But I think there's also a lot of interest in our building about maintaining the park. We will be repaving our driveway, and in probably about the same time the sewer project is going on. So we'd like to be able to coordinate, get good technical advice on how to get water permeable pavements, rain gardens, whatever we can do to mitigate erosion as we design this project. We of course want to make sure that we have minimal environmental impact as the sewer project is implemented. We also have a lot of issues with invasives very close to our property. And I think some people might be interested in a little bit of volunteer weed whacking if that can be done. How do we communicate to people in our building what they can do to be in contact with the Conservancy and moving forward on these issues?
Great questions all. I will say we're happy to give advice and talk to you about the parking lot project that you just mentioned, but I suspect that Steve and his team with the River Smart program and some other resources at DOE would have even better technical advice. We're happy to triangulate as well. I am going to drop my email into the chat box for anyone who would like it. It's jbraha, so my first initial last name, which is phonetic, at rockcreekconservancy.org if you can't see the chat box. And our website is rockcreekconservancy.org. There is a whole host of opportunities, events, as well as ways to contact us on that website, and I would encourage you to take a peek at that. In terms of the Weed Warrior program that I mentioned, Weed Warriors do go through a rigorous training that's conducted by the Conservancy, actually DOEE and the National Park Service, to ensure that you have the proper training so that you can identify both the native plants that we want to keep as well as the invasive plants that we're trying to remove, as well as the right techniques for removing them, so that you don't create any inadvertent harm as you're trying to do this great benefit. And then you're actually given a permit to do the work within the park boundaries. We will not be able to train any new weed warriors until it's safe to get within 6 feet of each other. Imagine there's a lot of careful attention to plants on the ground. If you're just really chomping at the bit to learn about invasive plants, I would encourage you to come out to one of our social trail closure events, which we have most Saturday mornings. And I think we have one more bamboo removal event at Melvin Hazen. That's kind of a introduction to bamboo is an easy to identify invasive plant, and it's satisfying to remove because you get to use saws. When it comes to plants on private property, of course, you don't need a federal permit. So I'd be happy to have a member of my team come out and look at your property specifically to see if there are some issues right there, and we can give you advice on the distance on some of the best removal techniques. We would want to see just how easy it is or is not to look at.
Can I, this is Lois Forrester. Jeannie, I've emailed you a few times, and say hi to Kathy Wisk quickly. Hey, Kathy. I live in Van Ness North, and it's nice to hear from Judy from Van Ness East, because couple of problems, having lived here, is the unauthorized accesses from our properties. We've got one, and Van Ness East has three accesses that are not authorized. They're not the official entrances to the park. And I've talked to people about it who are going down there, and I'm thinking about bird nesting and bird migration, and it really is disruptive when people are making tracks into the park at these ends here that are not on the main trails. So Judy, that's one issue that I've identified. The other issue I've identified, well, is trash in general. I mean, the neighborhood. I mean, it all goes into Soapstone one way or another, and probably Melvin Hazen and so on and so forth. But we have an abundance of problems between WAMU and that little park out there, going into Rock Creek, into Soapstone, and all along our property lines. People it's trashy, and I picked up and pick up and pick up. So that's a problem, at least for Soapstone. And other than that, I mean, I do a lot of trash pickup. I did the water quality monitoring last year. I'm doing one this year, Kathy. Somebody beat me for Soapstone. So I'm not doing water quality monitoring there. But anyway, those are a couple of things I just wanted to mention, because Rock Creek has the same problems with trash, unauthorized access to the park. And we do have a problem here. So, and then the relationship too, when the project starts here in Soapstone, is people accessing the park, like from our property, just to see what the Park Service is doing, or their contractors. So that's a little bit worrisome too. That's all. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks for bringing that up. So the accessing the park from places that are not authorized entrances would be considered social trails, kind of creating those,
right,
then creates gaps in the forest. And that is something that we're working on. And actually I was thrilled after our piece ran in the Forest Hills Connection. I heard from a volunteer who works on the Soapstone Trail who wants some of our social trail signs to put them out there. Again, I think that peer-to-peer communication can be really effective when combined with some of those more broader campaigns. So it's helpful when you talk to your friends and neighbors about that. The Conservancy is also working. We've just finished a comprehensive signage plan for the park, which will include really useful and descriptive signs at all of the trailheads that have like "you are here" maps, like you're at the mall, that give you some description of where to go and how to get back, importantly. And I think that those will go a long way towards making it very clear what is an official trail, because oftentimes it's hard to know because there is no understory, as we talked about before, what's a trail and what's just, kind of a deer path or a big gap between two trees. So once we're able to put all of those signs out, it will be very clear if there's not a sign there, that's not an officially designated trail. I think over
on private, I'm sorry, but we're private property, and people are just from our private property.
I see what you're saying.
Are going in, and then we have people going off trail who may have entered elsewhere coming up into our property. So it's just a mishmash of people coming up through these access points that they can visibly see because they've been trodden for so many years, obviously, because you can see the trail, designated unauthorized trail. So I don't know if anybody has any suggestions or ideas for maybe putting a sign sort of somewhere, maybe not on our property, but maybe on Park Service or a stake or something to indicate that those are Park Service property.
Yeah, if there aren't those boundary markers that indicate the edge of the park,
Well, we have them, they're hidden during in vegetation, invasives. Oh, yeah,
Anyway.
so that's a problem on along, and Judy, I'd be happy to talk to you more about it with ideas. You know, we could talk about ideas, and plus I met the PAT's Potomac Appalachian Trail guy, and he put a lot of wood debris to block the access points along Audubon. And we talked about doing it here, but he thought there might be issues with that. And we haven't met yet to talk about how we could potentially, as a PATC person who's been trained, to look at our access points and see if there's anything we could do.
Okay.
Jean, I think it's time.
I was going to say, I need to run. Thank you all.
Do you have 30 more seconds though?
Sure.
Okay, my question to you is, I guess there's some issues that have been raised. Is there something specific you could suggest that we could do or the ANC could do that would help move your agenda on these projects?
Well, like I said, for the renaming, having a letter of support will likely be very helpful. That is a long-term project though.
Okay.
In terms of the other issues, I think if you would all be willing to share the communications from the Conservancy with information about recreating responsibly, as well as some of the stewardship issues, we would appreciate that tremendously. And then do whatever Steve tells you.
Okay. All right. And thank you so much, Jean. I know you have to run. Sorry, you're 3 minutes late.
No problem. Thanks for the opportunity.
We
Talk to you all
appreciate your
soon.
time. And Steve made it on, so
He's there, yeah.
I don't see him, I don't think.
I'm here. I'm here. Can you hear me?
I can hear you, but you're not on my screen. I don't know how this
My
works.
video should be shared, so.
There he is.
It's okay. I think others can see you, but
Could I,
somehow.
Erica, could I ask a question? I'm Kate Dell, and I don't know, I couldn't get on till now, but what is the renaming that Jean asked about or mentioned just now? Renaming of what?
I think
Melvin
it was
Hazen.
renaming
Melvin
the
Hazen.
Melvin
Uh-huh.
Hazen.
Okay, good
There.
news. Okay, thank you.
Okay.
Do you just want me to jump right in, or did you?
Jump right in, Steve,
Okay.
and oh, there you are. Now your name showed up. Okay,
Okay.
sorry. I'm like, you know, a
You're-
Zoom fight.
I'm glad
So
I was not the only person having technical difficulties.
no,
tonight.
you know what? As I said, it's like I thought everyone. I clicked the box or checked the box that said, you know, everybody didn't have to wait to be admitted, but then apparently there were all these people waiting, but others got on. So you were waiting, and I finally figured out how to admit people. So I apologize.
No, it's no worries at all. So thank you for inviting me here this evening, and thanks to everyone for tuning in at home. So yeah, so my understanding is that I'm here to talk about things that DOEE is doing in and around your ANC that that the Parks and Trails Committee could be helping with. And so I'm going to kind of go through, give like 3 overarching things, and then dive into maybe a little bit more detail on a couple of things. And I did hear one question that I'll circle around to that Jeannie started to answer, but I can probably provide a little bit more detail as well about the Van Ness East condo site. So, the 3 overarching things, I'll get right to it, that the Parks and Trails Committee and the ANC can help DOEE with are, in general, advocating for projects and legislation and funding that will help our agency perform work, you know, for to provide improvements, environmental improvements to your ANC area. And excuse me, sorry. We are often, asked to take on new projects, but we are a small, smallish, middle-sized agency in district government with limited budgets, and especially now budgets have become tighter. So the thing that often works to get budgets, money, shaken out of pockets is having advocates in the community say that they really want to see a project move forward. And so that's, something that the Parks and Trails Committee can be very helpful with. I would also say, by the way, you don't have to go to your, council member. You can, talk directly to me. And, if you have a project that you guys want to take on, or send something to our director about something that you want to see done, that is effective. We respond to anytime we hear from the community, and especially if we're hearing from an organized group such as an ANC. So that's one general thing. I would also say reviewing and commenting on projects that are planned and coming up is something that the group can do. For example, I know the committee has been very involved in the plans for Soapstone and provided feedback to DC Water on that project, and has done a lot to move that in a direction that is probably more environmentally sensitive than it would have been otherwise. May not be exactly, everything that the ANC would want, but it's, it's an improvement. And that's, I think that these are things that we see all the time, that we are responsive to the community, and we will, DOE, I can speak for DOE, when we have a project in your neighborhood, we will come to you and tell you about it. We will come to your ANC meetings. We will then hold also individual meetings on that topic separately as well, to make sure that we're not just meeting with the ANC, but we're offering to the whole community as well. So, we want your feedback, and we do make changes based on that. And then lastly, and I think this is one that Jeannie mentioned a lot as well, is community awareness about programs that we have, that we do, we manage in the agency, helping us spread the word. We have a very small communications staff, and we try and get the word out onto listservs, and are trying to communicate with the public. That has actually become even harder during COVID, because there's additional bureaucracy that we have to go through to get messages out to the public. So anytime that an ANC can be, or any group can be a force multiplier for us and get the word out on programs that we have, word of mouth is one of the best ways that our programs spread. We have very little that we do in advertising for our programs. So we really rely on that word of mouth from the community. So those are the three overarching areas where I see the Parks and Trails Committee and the ANC as a whole being helpful for the work that we do. Maybe I'll pause there for a second and see, before I could dive into some of those specific programs that we run and different things that are going on in the neighborhood. But I wanted to pause there and see if there were any questions.
David, did you want to ask something?
I'll ask the question, and Steve, you can either say, I'll answer it now or I'll answer it later. But it's really, sort of your department, your work, and how does that relate to the city's comprehensive plan that's up for, council review right now. So help us, is that something worth talking about a bit or holding for a bit?
It wasn't on my list, but I think that is the comprehensive plan is something that basically any agency will look to see, to make sure that the initiatives are consistent with what we do. And we try and advocate for that, and we try and also make sure that they are aware of upcoming projects and initiatives and long-term initiatives that we have that are going on, and those get folded into the comprehensive plan. So I have not seen, quite frankly, I saw an earlier draft that and provided feedback on it. I did not look at the final draft to see what had been incorporated, but one could assume, I do assume that most of the things that we discussed and we provided feedback on would have been incorporated into that comprehensive plan. That gives you, like, on the overarching, what's our relationship. I do think that that's a very important document for the ANC to look at and make sure that it is consistent with your values and the direction you want to head. I will say your ANC has one of the more unusual things in the city, having a tree and slope overlay district that protects parts of the Forest Hills community from being, it can't have development that clear cuts a property. And there are very few parts of the city that have that tree and slope overlay. And, so I think that's something that is an example of a type of thing that goes into a comprehensive plan or goes through Office of Planning and zoning, and that your community advocated for. So that's a long answer to say that it is a very valuable document. I do recommend looking at it.
I have a question, Steve. You mentioned that the community's input on the sewer rehabilitation project had a very positive impact that moved them closer and more sensitive to a lot of environmental issues. Can you say a little more about that, please?
Well, I mean, so it's still a work in progress. So, but in terms of the community was very clear about being concerned about tree loss. And I know from dealing with DC Water that they are very much taking that into account. National Park Service heard that very loud and clear, and that there is a lot of effort going into reducing those impacts and looking at design alternatives that would address that. That would be one example of a way that the community has provided feedback. I also know that the community has made DC Water aware of some alternative technologies, and I don't know to what level the DC Water has incorporated those, but I know that they heard the community about that and have explored them because of that.
And when you say it's a work in progress still, where is, what do you mean by that?
Well, they are having to go through a design process, and they have, so that will, that design will be an iterative design that they will have to come to the public and provide, here's where we're at with the design, here's what we're providing, and so solicit feedback from the public on those designs. And those will also come to our agency to provide feedback as well. So there will be additional opportunities moving forward for public feedback on the plans before it's finalized.
Design, when you say design or plans, can you be more specific? Is it related to the design for when they tear all the trees out and design for the plantings, or other aspects of the work of the project?
Yeah, so I mean, they're going to need access roads to get the equipment into the areas that they're working, and those access roads, they're looking at one way of doing that. And I'm not going to, because I'm not on the design team, I can't really speak to that, but generally they're going to be looking at it from the aspect of, okay, how can we move the equipment safest and easiest from place to place. There may be other aspects that need to be examined that the community would be very good at providing feedback on about,
Okay.
oh, well, using this trail area or reducing the number of trees that are impacted, and some suggestions in that way.
Thank you.
Okay, so I'm going to move on to some specific aspects of things that the community could help with, things that we do in the agency. Now, keep in mind, I work in the Watershed Protection Division. So the Watershed Protection Division, our role is to help restore the waters and streams of the city. And so everything that I'm going to be talking to you about is really programs that we manage. If you have questions about programs that are outside of that area, I may be able to address it, but if not, I can let you know, hey, I won't be able to do that, but I can get you in contact with the person who can. Things that we do we're doing a lot of work in a Watershed Protection Division that is voluntary stormwater retrofits. And these are projects that your neighborhood, well, the whole city has a lot of impervious surface, whether that's rooftops, roadways, sidewalks, driveways, etc. All that impervious surface keeps that stormwater from infiltrating into the ground the way it would in a natural environment. And what we have learned over time is that there are techniques to help mimic a more natural environment. And lots of, you may have heard of rain gardens. These are like kind of a sunken area where you allow water to collect and infiltrate into the ground, and you kind of put a sandy soil mixture there to allow that water to infiltrate. A whole bunch of other techniques, and I'm not going to go into all of them tonight because this is in Stormwater 101, but just say that we do that type of work. And one day I'm going to talk about different programs that we have aimed at different areas of the city. First of all, we do work in the right-of-way. So roadways are a large part of that impervious surface. And all these roadways, well, most roadways in the district were designed prior to stormwater. We're trying to address this stormwater issue, and we wanted to get this water off of roadways as quickly as possible. And all that water goes off the roads and goes down into the local streams in this area. So what we're trying to do is slow down that water, treat it, clean it up, and cool it off, because it's oftentimes very thermally hot. The road is much hotter, the rooftops are much hotter than the normal cool water that would be flowing into streams. And that can be very shocking to fish and wildlife. So we work with the Department of Transportation to provide feedback on plans for projects that they have where they are doing a roadway retrofit. In your neighborhood, an example of that is that there is a plan to redo Connecticut Avenue from the circle all the way down, I believe, to like around Duke Ellington Bridge area, down to Cleveland Park. And most of that is going to be looking at bus lanes and dedicated cycle lanes and that side of things. But there are opportunities to, at that same time, address the stormwater from the roadway. And this, if the community is interested in that, if that's something that you want to advocate for, that would be something I would encourage you to express when those projects are moving forward. I would also say this is a big project and it crosses more than your ANC, of course, and encouraging your other ANCs to speak with one voice on this issue, it would be better heard. So, advocating across ANCs would be very useful in that way. DOE also provides advice to the community. If they have a stormwater issue in the right of way, we will go out and speak with you and come up with, here's what we would do under the circumstances. Again, we do not control the right of way, that's owned by DDOT. So we can provide advice, but in the end, it's DDOT's decision to implement those efforts or not. So moving on from the right-of-way, we have a suite of programs called, that we call the River Smart programs. And one of them is called River Smart Communities. And this is where I'll pause and say that Van Ness East was a recipient of a River Smart Communities grant to do some stormwater retrofits in the back area between the building and Rock Creek Park.
I think you're thinking of Van Ness North.
Oh, is it north? I'm sorry, I thought it was east.
Yes.
Thank you for correcting me. Well, one of the Van Ness properties was a recipient of a River Smart Communities grant. In addition to that, we will go out, we have staff that will go out and provide advice on what can be done. So in this case for Van Ness East, if you are, looking at redoing that roadway and you're seeking advice on how you could be more environmentally sensitive, we would be happy to come out and provide you feedback on that. Additionally, I just want to note that there's a stormwater credit trading program where if you do voluntary stormwater retrofits, so if you're redoing this area and you install some stormwater practices, something that reduces that stormwater pollution off of your property, you can sell the credits that you generate in a marketplace. And so if you wanted to pay up front and do that, then you would be the owner of those credits and you could sell them to other developers who are not able to meet their stormwater obligations on their site. They can buy those credits from you to help meet part of their obligation. And if you don't want to front that money up front yourself, there are people out there that are stormwater credit aggregators, sort of like people that are installing solar panels on rooftops at no charge to the property owner, but then they get the credit for those solar panels are installed. There are credit aggregators who can potentially, that you might want to meet with, who can come in and do the project at no cost to you, and then they would receive the benefit of those stormwater credits. David, did you say something? No? Okay. That's the River Smart Communities program that I mentioned. At one time, it was open to condo associations like Van Ness East, Van Ness North. We have changed that, and now it is solely aimed at religious institutions and nonprofit, programs that benefit the community, like a 501c3. We also have a program called River Smart Schools, which works on school grounds, and it is an application process. If you have a school in the neighborhood that you would like to see install stormwater retrofits on their property, you can work with them to apply to this program, and then we come out. If it's successful, come out and install this. We also train teachers on how to use these practices as a teaching tool as well. And then the one I haven't mentioned yet, well, two other that I haven't mentioned. One is River Smart Rooftops, which installs vegetated rooftops on buildings. Well, we provide rebates to that. And those might be something that, especially the larger buildings like the Van Ness complex, folks could, if you're redoing your roof, you could apply to have this vegetated roof installed at the same time. That reduces stormwater. It also reduces your heating and cooling bills. and cuts down on your impervious area charge for the building. So it saves you money in a couple of ways. Then lastly, we have the River Smart Homes program, which is something that offers incentives to homeowners to install these type of things on their property, on individual homes. So these are all things that we do, that we sell basically through word of mouth. But if the ANC were interested, they could provide additional, megaphone to the community on our behalf. Just a couple other quick things, because I know we're running out of time. We also do tree planting in the city. In our program, we will plant trees on your property free of charge. So if you have an interest in having trees planted, it doesn't matter what the size of the site, it's free of charge. And happy to get you in contact with folks that would be doing that. We also do stream restoration work. We have done some stream restoration work in the area around your community. And we also do work at outfalls. There's an outfall that goes into soapstone that we have repaired, that we're actually going to have to do some additional repairs to as a part of this soapstone project as well. So we are working with DC Water to coordinate efforts on that type of thing. And then two final things I'm going to talk about, and then I'll stop. We also run programs that are inspection related. So the bag fee, that the 5-cent fee, we do inspections of people to make sure that businesses to make sure that they're compliant with that. Individual citizens can let us know if there's a property where you went to and you didn't get charged a fee and you should have been charged, or if there's someplace that you would like for us to go out and visit and do an inspection of them, we do that. That also applies with the food service ware. So like plastic straws are now banned in the district, and also non-compostable forks and cutlery and that side of things. And so if you're seeing things that are non-compostable in a local business, you can let us know and we can come out and inspect those facilities. And then lastly, large scale construction projects, even small scale construction projects, having you be the eyes and ears. If you see construction going on and there is sediment leaving that construction site, that is an erosion sediment control violation, and you can report that to DOEE, and we will go out and send an inspector out there and have that situation corrected. So I'm going to stop there. I said I wasn't going to speak 15 minutes, but I did speak more than 15 minutes, so well over 15 minutes.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Does anybody have any questions? I have one if nobody else does. On that Connecticut Avenue project, what is it exactly we would be advocating for, and what if we didn't advocate it? Like, what would their stormwater measures be, as of now?
Well, so it's a little bit hard to say because, again, it's in the planning phases. There hasn't been any detailed design work that I've seen yet. Because of that, I don't know exactly what they have planned, but my understanding is that they are going to be working within pretty much the existing limits of the roadway, and that their plan is not to be doing a lot of roadway reconstruction. So they're not like going to be digging up the roads. So because of that, they wouldn't trigger our stormwater regulations that would require them to do stormwater work. That's only required if they dig down to the sub-base of the roadway and are really completely rebuilding the road. they do that, then they trigger our stormwater regulations and they would have to treat stormwater. So, you know, the community saying, hey, you're going to be here. We, you know, suggest that you incorporate some of these stormwater retrofits, such as have been done elsewhere in the city. And I'd be happy to provide you with a list of places where DDOT has done it. There are some not too far from your neighborhood. Oregon Avenue is an example.
What's an example? I'm sorry.
Oregon Avenue.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
Okay. But specifically, sorry, one thing, specifically there is a plan that was made, excuse me, with Office of Planning that DDOT was involved in, that DOE was involved in for specifically the Van Ness area, the Van Ness corridor of the roadway. And so you could reference that plan, which is on the Office of Planning website, for, you know, addressing, for greening that area and saying, hey, this plan exists. We suggest that you incorporate some of those ideas into this effort at the same time. And I would say, even though that's specifically for the Van Ness corridor, you know, expanding that to the entire length of the roadway project would, you know, be something that would, sorry, go ahead.
Thank
I
you.
have a question. When you talk about Van Ness corridor, what are you talking about? Are you talking about Van Ness Street area for the Connecticut Avenue study?
So yeah, there was, you know, I'm kind of breaking it down by the neighborhood of the Van Ness area. There was a study done by Office of Planning for, you know, basically right around, you know, the most developed part of Van Ness, UDC, the businesses up that direction.
Steve, can I interrupt?
Sure.
Just because I was around when that was done, and it's from Albemarle to around Tilden. That was the area. And the plans are on, I think are available on the Forest Hills Connection that Steve is referring to. And there were a number of studies along that line. And when Mary Beth and I advocated for getting $1.5 million on the Van Ness Streetscape project, we actually billed it initially and approached DDOT as a stormwater management project. And they really just discouraged us from doing that because they saw the problem of stormwater in that area as upstream from the area, and that they could only deal with a very minimal amount, have very minimal amount of impact, because a lot of it's because of the subway underneath and limited ability to impact. So, so I don't know how DDOT is going to respond to that unless you know, things have changed.
Yeah, I mean, I would say, you know, from my perspective, and I'm not, you know, in DDOT, and so I don't have to, it's easy for me to say the things that I say. But, you know, the truth of the matter is that stormwater, the problem of stormwater is from the imperviousness everywhere. It's not uphill, it's not downhill. Connecticut Avenue is a very large piece of real estate that is 100% impervious, you know, and for us to be effective, we have to work everywhere. You know, I can tell you that the subway is very deep underground. It also has some pumps, you know, that there is no regulation saying that you can't infiltrate stormwater in those areas.
Okay.
You know, so, you know, yes, there is a lot of infrastructure. I'm not going to say it's easy or that it won't be costly. It will be. You know, that's true pretty much everywhere in the city, but it's especially true in areas that are highly, highly developed, such as Van Ness. But
Well,
we have to do it sometimes.
the naysayers will point to all kinds of other things. There's the metro tunnel, yes, but then when we pointed out that much of what we were talking about was not above metro tunnels at all, then they started talking about the utility facilities, the utility lines, and they didn't really know exactly where the utilities were. The utilities had been moved around, whether it was their own, whether it was pipes for water or pipes for gas or pipes for sewage or pipes for the communication system. So I got my impression, Steve, maybe I'm way off on this, I'm taking it with a real grain of salt, but at least I heard what you were saying. My impression is that we don't have a plan that the planners went through that could be executed, taking into account all of the stuff that's under the sidewalk and under the street that would have to either be moved or dealt with. And I think they'll claim that they don't know, and they have to do more work and do more work and do more work. Maybe I'm being too pessimistic.
Certainly that is true, but that's what I was saying. Any of these things, they have to go through a design process. What was proposed were conceptual plans that were looking at that level of things. That's normal. That's the way we do business, is that you start with that, and then you get buy-in from the community. Then you go in and you figure out where those things are. There's an iterative, where you make some changes to the plans at that point in time based on where you can do it and where you can't do it. You eliminate some sites and you expand the size of other ones where you can.
Which agency actually does the design work?
In the case of the roadway, it would be DDOT that would do it. They would contract.
And the sidewalks too?
Yes, any place in the right of way.
Thank you.
Anything else for Steve?
Well, can I just say thank you to Steve for your help that you gave to us back when we have our rain garden put in. And we also have basecaping. And we are all so happy with that. So thank you. And I'm sorry it's not available to residential buildings of our size anymore. But thank you anyway for your fine work.
You're welcome. I'm glad that we were able to do it. I wish that I will say that one of the problems that we had previously was that we would come out, we would do these presentations with and come up with a design, and then the condo, there might be a few people on the condo association, condo board that were interested in it, but then we'd go through a very long process, and then the condo boards would say no. And so we found that we were spending a lot of time going through a design process and then ending up not getting them installed. And so we found that wasn't the most effective way for us to work. And that's why we stopped working in that way and focused. And plus we have so much to do just with working with religious institutions and nonprofits. So
yeah, this whole discussion is blowing my mind, but I'm glad we got in when we did. Thank you.
Yes, me too. I have a question. You talked about design. Will we see the design for Soapstone Valley?
And I don't work for DC Water, but I presume, I can tell you, to me, it's an agency best practice that they should be coming forward with designs at different levels and presenting them to the community. And so I would presume that you would. And if you do not see that, then I would encourage you to, reach out to DC Water and, demand.
Okay.
Will the Park Service, also be involved in neighborhood presentations of the design?
So
like they
presuming that they're going to do it, then the Park Service would be there. I mean, they're obviously the landholder that is most impacted.
Okay.
Yeah.
Would they do what they did? I guess it was a year ago or more at the I think it's a assisted living or nursing home,
Forest Hills.
Forest Hills, yeah. They did a big presentation of this then, before they did I think it was the proposed rule on it.
Yeah.
Um,
So yeah, presumably, so they had the environmental assessment that has been finalized. Now they're going through the design process from that, and I would imagine, yeah, that the Park Service would be asking DC Water to present to the community, and that they would be present as well.
okay, thank you.
I think that's it. And we're just 10 minutes behind schedule. That was really helpful, Steve. Thank you so much for taking the time to extend your workday and talk to us. So
No
really,
worries. Thank you for inviting me. And yeah, please, yeah, feel free to reach out if you have any questions. Happy to answer them offline and follow up. Okay?
thank you. I'm sure we will.
All right. Have a good evening.
Thank you for your
All right.
good work.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Now I'm going to turn it over to David Christial, our newest ANC rep,
Oh, yes.
who might have some updates on
You're
some
gonna turn it
issues.
over to me, and I also want to. So thanks for having us or having me. I've been trying to work with Erica. She volunteered to chair this committee, and so I think she said in return for doing this committee, I want you to serve on it. So I've got Monica Nemeth, who's the ANC chair, next to me, and so I want to introduce her as well.
Yes, I'm sorry, Monica. I meant to do
All
that. And I'm like dealing with David calling in and various other things. So hi, Monica.
How are you, Erica?
Yeah, and so so Monica, if you want to start, and then I'll follow
No,
you.
go right ahead. I'll just,
I was going to say, I think that between myself and Monica, myself, and I think Naomi Ruttenberg is also on this committee. Is that Monica? Is she on this or not?
She is, but she hasn't been very involved of late, but she has expressed, in fact, she has said that she plans to get more involved, especially once her term as commissioner comes to an end. She plans on really being an active member of this committee in 2021 going forward, because she's not running for re-election this year.
I think, and again, I just kind of, we're trying to, this goes both ways. And so we're trying to, as ANC commissioners, help you and support you all. And then I think the other, it looks like you've got a really active committee that's got a lot of interest and a lot of expertise and spent a lot of time on these issues. So it's, as you have issues that you think need to come up to us, we certainly want you to bring them to us. And so I'm, kind of mainly listening in, as I am a new commissioner, as I'm getting kind of my feet wet around here, and as a trained as a planner, I'm interested in planning. And so that's kind of my question with Steve Sorry earlier about the, where does this work fit into the city's comprehensive plan? And it's not just the environmental piece, but I'm a housing guy, so I'm interested in housing. And I know David Barden, you mentioned the potential conflicts between property owners or homeowners and the environment. And I think going forward, I think we're going to have to figure out how to address these, because there's a perspective that the city is going to keep growing. There's a need for more affordable housing. There's not much affordable housing here in Ward 3. And so I think we have to balance, how does the city continue to evolve, and probably adding more people and adding more housing, but also making sure we're protecting the environment. And so that's going to be a tough thing to work on. But I think, between this committee, there's a housing and neighborhoods committee, and then there's the streets and sidewalk, which is, right now working on Connecticut Avenue and all these things. So I think that the more we can kind of work together, with the committees and with the ANC on some of these big issues, I think.
Yeah. And David, one of the things I think you'll find is one of the big challenges that we have with Parks and Trails is this is where we have this big intersection of federalism, because these parks are all federal property. So we don't have jurisdiction at all. So to say that we're really advisory here. We just try to get involved and it is really our scope. And so we keep an eye on things and we try to be involved, but you know, the Park Service doesn't have to listen to us.
But is there some sort of history of their taking your views into account or meeting with you, or does it all go through the city council, or does it never get relayed to them?
I think they listen to us. I mean, David Bardeen certainly has a long history here and is set in this role that I have today, so I think he could certainly speak to that.
Well, look, well, let me suggest to Commissioner David, from former commissioner, just activist David, I think you will be surprised. The conflict is not with the one you anticipate. I think the people whose homes, whose high-level homes overlook Soapstone Valley Park, have a very big interest in keeping as many of those trees alive and healthy and large and shady, et cetera, as possible. And I think the contractor who is going to be selected by DC Water and who will be involved in the design process will have an interest in having the access roads just as wide and easy to maneuver as possible, even though that means cutting down more trees. And you'll find that it's the property owners who want to preserve, and it's the government agency that either helps do that or stands aside and lets the contractor get a design in which the access roads are very wide for whatever reason. Now, the one big exception we had was the repair job that DC Water did on the carriage path that goes eastward from Van Ness Terrace. They had to get in there, they had to do some work. And given the person, the engineer, the project manager from DC Water on the one hand, and the contractor at the other, they were absolutely thoroughly meticulous in not cutting down a single tree. I don't know, they even cut down a single branch, but they went to great effort to avoid that. And I think we'll have to see whether that's the circumstance we're going to face or not, or whether our friends who are looking down at the park are going to see many of the trees that they've enjoyed just go away because the contractor wants it to be easy to move in and out. That's called design.
Yeah, I think what David is saying is saying some very important things. For instance, Park Van Ness, the apartments overlooking the park, the residents there are charged a lot more money for their park views. They don't have this on their radar screen at the moment. The residents along some of Albemarle Street are very concerned about this. The residents along Audubon are very concerned about this. So there are a lot of issues there where residents are concerned, and it's clear that Park Van Ness, I mean not Park Van Ness, but Van Ness East has formed a committee, which is wonderful. There are a lot of smaller committees, and it's interesting because they're not on this call, who are concerned about what's going on. So how does all that dovetail? How does all that work together?
Well, as I remember it, it's been about a year since the plans were shown to us. And it looked as though from those conversations that we're going to be on the tail of the DC Water, whoever comes into the park. And it seemed to me we had a good amount of energy to keep our nose in there so that the number of trees coming down will be held to a minimum. And I would think, you know, I guess we're just waiting for the plans to see what they're doing, and then people will join in again. Right now, there's nothing to hold on to say, no, you can't do it this way. But it just seemed to me that there was a very sincere feeling that DC Water is going to try to do it right, you know, but that could be naive. But anyway, I think we have citizens awareness that will help to guide this through. I might be naive, but anyway.
What David is saying also, which is very true, that we found that whoever the contractor is carries a lot of weight. So
Yeah.
the contractor, they had direction on the Audubon project, they had direction to do the work in one way. And when they got out there, the contractor said, wait, we could do it another way without taking up any trees at all. So he went back to DC Water and got permission to do it that way.
Yeah, yeah. So unless we know something, are there plans that have come our way? There's nothing really for us to work on right now, is there? No.
Nothing of which I'm aware.
In the report, it said it was gonna be late fall this year before
Okay.
they have any design work.
And given that we had, you know, COVID interrupt, who knows how long
Right.
of a delay that's going to introduce into this whole thing.
Mhm. David, have you heard anything on the timeline? Bardine?
No, I haven't heard, but I haven't asked.
Okay.
I wouldn't know. But what we're saying is right. It's the project manager and it's the contractor. And the COVID circumstances obviously have delayed a lot of things in a lot of agencies. It would be amazing if that wasn't true of DC Water also. And you've got to remember that people there conscientiously believe that it's important to protect the valley from possibility of sewage leaks. And it's about the trees. But if they can do a better job, faster, more soundly, cheaper, with a bigger access road, even though that means more trees, heavier equipment, even though that means more trees, they will see a reason for doing it. And somebody has to strike that balance. And what the balance is, I'm not saying the answer is preserve trees at all costs. But we have a big interest in who will be the project manager, who will be the contractor. And I don't know that we'll be invited to have any voice in who the contractor is. They have rules of DC Water. They advertise a project and people bid on it. And they have a scoring system. And the people who do the scoring are government employees. They may allow somebody from DOE like Steve Sorry, and they certainly will likely to allow somebody from the Park Service to participate in scoring if the Park Service wants to. But they won't allow us to have a role in selecting the contractor. At least I'd be surprised if they do.
It sounds like that there's nothing to be done on that for a while. We're waiting for the contractor to be selected and to see how it goes. But
Well,
David,
it would be nice if someone had the time to keep pestering DC Water and finding out where are they, you know, what's the next step and when will they get to it? And the Mr. Briggs, who is a liaison person, ought to be able to get an answer from anybody, any ANC commissioner, anybody whom the committee designates to do that. If I had time, I would do that, but I no longer have time to do it. I used to do that kind of thing.
There's certain contractors, again, what David brought up about the contractors, certain contractors who perform work that have a broader breadth of technology and how they can do things, which would mean less degradation to the land and fewer trees coming down if they were to use a certain method. So who they choose as their contractor is really important. But again, what can we do about that?
Well, let me just speak a little bit. I know that this committee focused a whole lot of time on DC Water and its impact on soapstone. And in the meantime, we're in a lull before that becomes active again. And there are other issues that this committee can be dealing with. And Steve raised one, which, or he raised a few. I mean, one of them is and this was in a previous conversation, Melvin Hazen Wetland Project. For us to really to move that up the queue would mean for us to really say that's a priority for the community. And it is, and that would protect and does protect the lower part of Melvin Hazen. The other, which, you know, I don't think we have even focused on at all, and whether we want to tackle, is which Steve brought up, is stormwater management on Connecticut Avenue. We've kind of dropped that, and that also impacts soapstone and the amount of water that what throws, because the water that comes off of Connecticut Avenue, at least our section, goes into soapstone. And then the other is in protecting soapstone. I think of, you know, in River Smart, there's the Seventh-day Adventist Church. I had walked Forest Hills with an engineer who was into stormwater management, who was supposed to be focused on the main street. But so I walked the area with her, and she said that Seventh-day Adventist Church could be doing a lot to control the water that's coming down onto 32nd Street and then into Soapstone Park. So, you know, I feel like we should not, you know, we should really start maybe broadening the scope and considering other issues, as well as keeping in mind that DC Water is, you know, and its work in soapstone is important. But there are other important issues that I think this committee can focus on.
Yeah, along those lines, I don't know if David Christiel, you had something about Hearst, because that seems to be an issue, or the State Department parks. And finally, I just wanted to throw out, would it be okay if we change the name of this committee to maybe Parks and Watersheds, but drop Melvin Hazen and Soapstone and Broad Branch? And I don't know if anybody feels strongly about that. They can email me about it, or if you have a name idea for the committee. But there are some other issues, and I guess we are running out of time. But I wanted to see if David wanted to say anything, or Monica, about some other potential issues. And then I was thinking of just gathering some issues and maybe doing a survey about what people want to work on, or what they think we should focus on.
I think if I can, yeah, just to jump in, you know, I think that, you know, I raised the Hearst Park issue because it's, you know, it's kind of sitting out there, and now they're getting going again, and just, I don't, you know, again, and I'll kind of, since Monica's here, I can sort of ask the question in terms of some of these, you know, like the Hearst construction and all that, you know, if it's in a committee within the ANC, Monica, I guess I imagine it's, I mean, I don't know, was this the committee that kind of dealt with that?
Well, are we talking about the pool that's stalled?
Exactly, yeah.
And I'm not entirely sure what's going on there. I mean, I know Mary Chay's office has kind of looked into that as well. And there was something, I don't know, Marlene, you might even know more about it than.
Well, we just got an update, Monica. So that's, you know, they're getting going on there. But again, I think it's just, and I'm just kind of talking to myself. It seems like if we could get some of these larger projects into a committee structure, and it seems like this particular project, the Hearst, you know, the pool and soccer field, it seems like that's a, I mean, I'm kind of, I guess it raises a question, you know, both to the committee and I guess to you, Monica, that seems like that's where, you know, that project fits in this committee's purview.
Oh, yeah.
It affects stormwater runoff. If you go to the south, I guess the southeast corner, they've actually, you know, in the construction, they've run into an underground spring, and they're piping that, literally got a pipe taking that water out of the spring and putting it into the sewer. So it's kind of been doing that for, I don't know, 2-3 months now. So it's just kind of a funny little thing that's going on. And but it just seems like I just think that's a big enough project that somebody ought to be watching it And I'm not trying to necessarily deflect because it's in my SMD, but it seems like from a committee structure and its impact, you know, it has impact on what's, you know, how water's running off, you know, from Wisconsin Avenue and then down to, you know, down ultimately into Rock Creek and into the Potomac. So
Did the fellow who used to represent your district, did he leave any info for you? Because that was David, right?
Yes.
And he was working on that for a couple of years.
He
So
had
there
a
should be
subcommittee.
should be info for you somewhere.
I mean, I think, and it might be in the archive, and I can go ahead and look at that.
There are many public meetings and stuff. There was no resolution as far as anything. So I'm sorry to hear that.
There were quite a few resolutions about the pool.
But I think the issues that David Castile is bringing up, these are things that have come up since then during construction and things like that spring, which they did not anticipate. And so now they've kind of rigged something together, and these construction, you know, the pool was supposed to be done and open for this past season. So obviously all pools were closed this season, but clearly they're a season behind. And so what happened there? Those are, you know, these are issues that kind of came up during the course of this construction project itself that were already outside our hands. And even Mary Che's office had problems getting answers because people were asking questions and they were giving her office the runaround. She was having troubles finding out what's going on there.
So does David take that on as the new area person?
This David?
Yeah, you, David. New David.
I don't mind watching it. I think, I mean, I'm perfectly happy to monitor it, but I want to, if there's issues that come up around it, I want to be able to bring it to this committee. Is that?
Oh yeah.
That's what he did.
Yeah, that's what David did. We became we spent a lot of time on the Hearst pool because of that. And I don't know, talk with your neighbors down in that area. They were all hot to do something correct. So
My neighbors?
well, the ones down in that, you know, I'm up here in Van Ness, so you're down. I think of you as down there.
I'm at Tilly Gardens, but I'm trainable, so.
Isn't your predecessor back in the United States from India now? And
He was in the UK, and I'm not sure if he's back yet or not.
Yeah, he is. He is.
Is he?
I think I ran into him at Bread First a few weeks ago.
Oh, I thought he was gone for a year.
Anyhow, if you're here, aside from archive material, it might just be interesting for you to sit down with him, masks on, of course, or have tea or coffee or whatnot, and just see how he reacts to the issues of today. He may not have run into those fact patterns.
I'll try to reach out and touch it. Well, I won't touch him.
But it's a complicated relationship.
Yeah.
And while we're talking, going back to Connecticut Avenue, as I recall, Erica, the lead on the Connecticut Avenue work was for some reason in the Office of Planning rather than in DDOT. I don't know that DDOT have had a very large role, but Office of Planning did, and they hired engineering firms and they got money to do stuff. Now, DDOT has other things on their mind now, like giving up on the changing the lane directions, or do we have parking on Connecticut Avenue as the local businesses want, or do we have a no parking strip for bicycles and buses? If they're going to be looking at those issues which have nothing to do with stormwater, maybe we should be trying to educate ourselves enough, or find somebody who will educate enough on the stormwater part to see if we can't get that as part of the job. But it takes more than monitoring. Somebody has to go dig into it, find out, ask questions, meet with, at least on the phone, with people from DDOT and other agencies who can give them insights on how they are looking at these issues and what
the Van Ness neighborhood, what do they call themselves? The
Main Street.
Main Street.
Main Street. I'm assuming they're tied in because I went to some meetings on it a while back, a year and a half ago, and they were working pretty intensely on it. And it was based on, like you said, the planning division or the planning department in DC that was working on it. And I don't know the status of, I don't know the status right now, but that group, Main Street, would be a place to contact and find out what they're doing. I think a new person has been hired.
Yeah, Gloria is now the new executive director.
Yeah, so she might know more than right now. She might know more, being in touch with that. So
If you're talking about the Connecticut Avenue reversible lane study, that's underway, and that's the Streets and Sidewalk Committee of this
Right.
is working on that. But I guess if David Barton's raising the question, I think the study is just about the kind of what the changes would be, and then again if there's any construction related, that would be like a next phase, and that may be where there'd be stormwater sort of places where we could might want to look at. But I don't know that they're anticipating any new construction as a result of that study. But that's something to
they
look.
actually
But
plans.
one of the things, Commissioner David, one of the things they sometimes suggest for stormwater is if you take a little peninsula and you stick it out into the lane and you put sandy soil there and plant appropriate plants, but the result is to diminish the usability of that lane for buses going through. Maybe a bicycle could swerve around it, but not bicycles. So, these pieces have to be put together. And certainly the interest of the biking community and the interest of the buses is probably more powerful politically in the attention of DDOT and the elected officials, including possibly ANC commissioners, possibly not, than the concern about stormwater. So I'm just saying that if we're just going to let that sit and be on the shelf, the way Steve Sari said, and nobody has time to really look at it and push for realizing any of those potential benefits, then I don't think either the committee or the ANC will accomplish anything in getting that done.
Since we are over time, is people get in touch with issues that they think we should be working on, focusing on. I will try to put together a list, and then we can try to sort out what we should be doing. Monica or David, do you have another approach?
No, I think that's a good approach, is to do that exactly, because the committee is the people who are involved. So what do people bring to the table? What are your concerns?
What are your concerns, and what is it the ANC can do about it? I mean, I feel like most of the issues were focused on that tonight. There were some that just like, well, that's something that the ANC can't get involved with. It's sort of a unique apartment building issue, for example, or something. Or, but if there's a creative way you think we can get involved and
bring things to our attention.
Yes,
because,
yes.
Because certainly.
Can I ask about the Streets and Sidewalks Committee? Are they the ones that have the oversight of this Connecticut Avenue study? Should we liaison with them as far as water runoff issues? I mean, how do we do that?
I think that's
We're meeting tomorrow night.
Yep. And Bob Daling, chair, and they actually
punishment. Yeah.
Yeah. So tomorrow, so if you want, you can tune in tomorrow night. Bob Daling is the chair of that committee. I think he lives in Van East, one of the Van East.
And yes, north, he's in our building.
Okay, so have at him,
Mm-hmm.
And
Is that something that would happen, that the two committees would overlap and work together on something? I just don't know. we've never done that. But I think it's a good idea,
Yeah.
basically.
Yeah, and so, Steve is on, there's a citizen advisory committee for the Connecticut Avenue study, and Bob's on it, I'm on it. They have a number of ANC reps from other ANCs, and so I think you're right.
Oh,
This
that's
is a
true.
normal issue. This is something that, again, I think it's, they're in the planning phase right now, but if you want to get ahead of this, picking up on what David Bardeen says, this is the time to try and kind of make these connections.
Okay. So yeah, if everybody wants to email me with questions, issues, concerns, anything, please feel free, and I'll try to put something together in a bit. I'm actually going on vacation. I know that's radical. For a couple weeks.
That's like a great idea.
Yeah.
So.
Well, I think we all agree we want to see the design plan for Soapstone Valley.
Okay.
Is that something the contractor does or DC Water does and
I think
gives
they
out?
put it out for.
I think it depends how they,
They bid on it, right?
I don't know.
They're supposed to
Yeah.
be doing design and then they put it out for RFP.
Yeah.
That's what I thought.
So we should see something, the community should see some design, the
Right.
design development phase before it goes out to bid.
David mentioned the liaison with DC Water. Can we get in touch with him? See what he
Emmanuel
said?
Briggs, yes.
Yeah.
Just email him.
Briggs?
Briggs.
B-R-I-G-G-S.
Briggs.
Who wants
I would
to do
assume
that?
that the ANC has a lot of this information.
Erica, you do that.
Monica, don't they have a lot of,
What information is that? Like on the plans or stuff like, I mean,
no, who to contact? and
oh
when
yeah, I have
to speak, and-
Emmanuel Briggs's,
Yes, yes,
I mean, we get emails from him on a regular basis, so.
right. So, I
Do
mean,
they
you
have
could
any
just be
information?
asked, where are you in the process?
Yeah.
And come give an update to the ANC.
That's a good idea. Yeah.
He won't like that.
Well, so he'll say,
Erica,
That's his job.
he can say, I can't make it, but
He
I
can
think
send
that's a
one of
good
his
idea.
cohorts,
Yeah. Good
which he's
sound.
done.
Yeah, if you have other ideas for, people who could provide updates or
Yeah.
illuminate an issue you have
Bring
an
us an
interest
email.
in.
without dear Monica.
So I thought.
That's good.
And
we'll
I'm
have
gonna put,
So-
Emmanuel Briggs's email into the chat window.
Oh, that is high tech.
Easy for you to grab
Yeah.
that way.
Briggs at dcwater.com, that's it.
Okay. All right. Should we sign off?
Hey, so what about, and then this, I guess, is a question to Monica too. So in terms of changing a name of a committee, I think that the genesis is that the existing name is about this long. And then I guess I learned tonight that, I didn't know Melvin C. Hayes and I didn't know his history. So, I mean, I guess the idea of the question was, is there a shorter name that makes this not so cumbersome, that's a little bit more identifiable, that's.
I would say, if you're asking process, David, just come to us with a new name, and I would say, I think we would approve it. I don't think we would have, the ANC would ultimately.
What does our mission statement say? Because I remember we worked on a mission statement.
Yes.
And so we did focus on parks and trails, but over time we've kind of gone off the trail. So I think a new name is good. But I like the idea of the water runoff, but what'd you call it?
Watersheds. What? Parks and watersheds.
Watersheds. I mean, that might be too broad, but it really hits on what we're trying to accomplish here too. So I kind of like that.
I think.
But then we'd have to come up with a new mission statement too.
I have a feeling it's probably a topic for another meeting. Like it's probably not.
Yes,
something,
I
know,
think so.
Right.
you have to kind of, it's something you need to sort of think about and come up with, like, what do you want it to be?
Well, I think Kate's right. There was a very long mission, well, a very worked on mission statement
Yes.
and what the committee was going to do. The
Mhm.
committee has definitely expanded with the watershed issue,
Yeah.
and especially into this Connecticut Avenue study.
Mhm.
David Bardeen is right. They haven't even thought about the infrastructure, and that was a very big thing that the Van Ness Main Street was looking at. And I know Marlene's not on now, but that seems to have, I don't know what's happened with that. The study is the first phase, this preliminary study, where Mary Chey had gotten the money to have that study done. There's something we need to be careful about, as a lot of past ANC commissioners know, there have been countless studies done, and then we don't seem to get the work done. So hopefully something soon will come out of this, because this has been brewing for 10 years.
Okay. It's 15 minutes over. I'm very punctual running meetings, so I'm
Have a good vacation.
to an end. Thank
Okay.
you.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
I'm so glad we're back together, and thank you, Erica.
Yes,
Nice
thank
to
you.
see
Yeah,
you
thank
Thank
you
you,
very much.
all, and thank you, Monica and David, in particular.
David and Monica, thank you too.
Yeah.
My
Thank
pleasure.
everyone.
We'll
Thank
be
you,
in
everyone.
touch. We'll see where we go from here.
Okay.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Take care.
See you all soon.
Good
Thank-
vacation.
Thank
Enjoy
you.
your vacation.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.